Did you know that Kazakhstan, the world's largest landlocked country, is one of the most uninhabited nations on Earth? With a population density among the lowest globally, Kazakhstan's vast steppes, deserts, and mountains stretch endlessly, almost looking lifeless. This emptiness is not merely a result of geographic size, but also historical and demographic factors. The legacy of nomadic traditions, Soviet-era policies, and the challenges of modernization have all contributed to the sparsely populated nature of this vast nation. So, in today's video, we will delve into the reasons behind Kazakhstan's emptiness, exploring the historical, cultural, and geographical factors that have shaped this unique aspect of the country. Without further ado, let's uncover this country. Overview of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan stands as the 9th largest country in the world, stretching over 2.7 million square kilometers. To put this size into perspective, if Kazakhstan were overlaid on the map of Western Europe, it would span from Portugal all the way to Poland, covering an area as large as several European countries combined. Similarly, when compared to the United States, Kazakhstan's landmass extends from the southern edges of San Diego up to St. Louis in the east, presenting a geographical scale that rivals many of the world's largest nations. Despite this enormous geographic footprint, Kazakhstan is remarkably sparsely populated. The country recently reached a population milestone of just over 20 million people. This figure is striking when compared with the densely populated regions of Western Europe, where over 400 million people reside, or the US state of Florida, which alone has a similar population number but is spread over an area 16 times smaller than Kazakhstan. This stark contrast sets Kazakhstan apart as one of the most empty countries globally, with a population density that barely surpasses 7 people per square kilometer. This places it among the countries with the lowest population densities worldwide, highlighting a unique aspect of its national character. This distribution has historical and environmental causes, including the country's harsh climatic conditions, which range from extremely cold winters to hot summers, further complicating the viability of dense human settlements. But let's take a systematic approach, starting with the historical causes to understand what went wrong. Historical factors. Kazakhstan's current demographic and geographic characteristics are deeply rooted in its historical experiences, particularly concerning Russian expansion and subsequent Soviet policies. The region's complex history of colonization, forced settlement, and environmental mismanagement has left indelible marks on its landscape and people. Starting from the 17th century, the Russian Empire began to expand into the vast steppes of Central Asia, including what is now Kazakhstan. This expansion was partly motivated by Russia's desire to secure its southern borders and control the lucrative Silk Road trade routes. The Kazakh steppe was gradually incorporated into the Russian Empire through a series of military campaigns and treaties. As Russian influence grew, so did the migration of Slavic settlers into the region. These settlers brought with them farming techniques and an administrative structure that was alien to the nomadic Kazakh tribes. By the 19th century, significant parts of Kazakhstan were under direct Russian control, and the process of Russification began to take shape, fundamentally altering the social and cultural landscape of the area. The Soviet era further intensified these changes. After the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, Kazakhstan became one of the constituent republics of the Soviet Union, marking a new phase of intense and often brutal transformations. Soviet authorities implemented policies aimed at integrating Kazakhstan more deeply into the Soviet economic and political system. One of the most significant and devastating policies was the forced settlement of nomadic Kazakhs. The traditional nomadic lifestyle of the Kazakh people, which had evolved over centuries to adapt to the region's harsh climates and sparse resources, was incompatible with the Soviet version of a modern socialist state. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Soviet authorities collectivized agriculture, which involved confiscating livestock and land from nomads and reallocating them to collective farms. This policy led to a massive disruption of traditional life and caused widespread famine and suffering. The famine of 1932 to 1933 in particular was catastrophic, resulting in the deaths of millions of Kazakhs, approximately a third of the population at the time. This tragic period dramatically reduced the Kazakh population and altered demographic patterns in the region for decades to come. In addition to these harsh policies, the Soviet regime also embarked on large-scale industrial and military projects that had long-lasting environmental impacts. One of the most notorious of these was the nuclear testing program in the Semipalatinsk test site, now the Polygon. From 1949 until 1989, the Soviet government conducted over 450 nuclear tests in this area, which led to widespread environmental contamination and serious health issues among the local population, problems that persist even today. Another environmental disaster that occurred under Soviet rule was the shrinkage of the Aral Sea, once one of the world's largest lakes. In the 1960s, the Soviet government redirected the rivers feeding the Aral Sea to irrigate cotton fields in Uzbekistan and other parts of Central Asia. This diversion of water resources caused the sea to shrink dramatically, devastating the local ecosystem and the livelihoods of people who depended on the sea for fishing and transport. The desiccation of the Aral Sea is often cited as one of the worst environmental disasters caused by human intervention, and its effects are still evident in the altered climate and ruined landscapes of the region. These historical factors have shaped modern Kazakhstan in profound ways, and today Kazakhstan continues to grapple with these legacies, striving to forge a national identity and development path that acknowledges its complex history while looking toward a sustainable future. Now let's have a look at the geographical factors that shaped the region's population. Geographical challenges. Kazakhstan's geographical position presents significant challenges that have historically influenced its population density and development. As the world's largest landlocked country, Kazakhstan is situated far from any ocean, which directly impacts its climate and economic opportunities. The absence of a moderating sea influence contributes to extreme climate variations, with temperatures swinging widely between seasons. The climate in Kazakhstan can be harsh, with cold, biting winters and hot, dry summers, conditions that are not conducive to dense human settlements or agricultural activities. The majority of Kazakhstan's vast territory experiences a cold desert or semi-arid climate. This climatic condition is characterized by very low precipitation levels throughout the year, which creates environments that are not ideal for traditional farming or dense habitation. The cold desert regions, particularly in the central parts of the country, feature bitterly cold winters with snow cover that persists for several months. Summers in these areas can be surprisingly hot, creating a thermal amplitude that is challenging for surviving here. The semi-arid zones of Kazakhstan, which cover large parts of the north and east, present slightly more hospitable conditions compared to the cold deserts, but still pose significant challenges. These areas receive slightly more rainfall, which supports growth of hardy grasslands and shrubs, and are similar to the steppes that cover the vast expanses of Eurasia. However, the limited rainfall still restricts agricultural possibilities primarily to grazing and the cultivation of drought-resistant crops. Kazakhstan's landlocked status has also affected the country significantly. Historically, being landlocked has posed challenges for trade and access to global markets. Without direct access to seaports, Kazakhstan has had to rely heavily on overland trade routes, which are often costlier and less efficient than maritime transport. This geographical limitation has historically hindered economic development, making it difficult for Kazakhstan to leverage its considerable natural resources fully. Moreover, the extreme weather conditions and challenging landscapes have shaped the settlement patterns in Kazakhstan. Large areas of the country remain uninhabited due to the severity of the environmental conditions. And with these conditions, Kazakhstan faces unique challenges in developing infrastructure and services. Building roads, hospitals, schools, and other infrastructure across a vast and inhospitable landscape is significantly more expensive per capita than in more densely populated regions. Additionally, the extreme climate makes maintenance of this infrastructure both difficult and costly, impacting economic development and the quality of life for its residents. Economic and political legacy. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Kazakhstan emerged as an independent nation facing substantial economic and political challenges. The transition from a centrally planned economy to a market-based system was tumultuous, characterized by significant economic upheaval, widespread poverty, and stark inequalities. This period was further complicated by large-scale emigration, as non-Kazakh populations, particularly ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, and Germans, began leaving the country, drawn back to their ancestral homelands by better economic opportunities or political incentives. This migration resulted in a substantial demographic shift, reducing the population and impacting the labor market, particularly in the northern regions where these communities had been concentrated. The economic struggles of the early post-Soviet years were profound. Kazakhstan inherited an economy overly reliant on large-scale heavy industry, much of which was inefficient and environmentally detrimental. The abrupt removal of Soviet subsidies and the breakdown of traditional production and supply chains led to a sharp decline in industrial output. Inflation soared and unemployment rates rose as factories closed or downscaled operations. The government, under the leadership of President Nursultan Nazarbayev, embarked on a series of economic reforms aimed at stabilizing the economy and attracting foreign investment, which included significant privatization of state assets and the creation of favorable conditions for international investors. Despite these challenges, Kazakhstan's vast natural resources presented significant opportunities for economic development. The country is rich in minerals and fossil fuels, including substantial reserves of oil, natural gas, and various other valuable minerals. The exploitation of these resources has gradually become the cornerstone of Kazakhstan's economic strategy. The discovery of massive oil fields, such as the Tengiz and Kashagan, has particularly transformed the economic landscape. These fields are among the largest in the world and have attracted billions of dollars in foreign investment from global energy giants. The development of these oil resources has fueled economic growth, dramatically increasing Kazakhstan's export revenues and providing the government with the funds needed to develop other sectors of the economy. Kazakhstan is also the world's largest producer of uranium, supplying about 40% of the global market. The country's uranium production capabilities have given it a significant strategic advantage and leverage in global energy markets, particularly with the increasing focus on nuclear power as a stable and less environmentally damaging alternative to fossil fuels. This sector's development has been less susceptible to the economic cycles affecting the oil industry, providing a more stable income stream and helping to balance the country's economic portfolio. So, despite its small population, the country's economy is the largest in Central Asia. Current demographic trends. Now, in the wake of its independence from the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan has experienced significant shifts in its demographic landscape, characterized by the recovery of the ethnic Kazakh population, changes in fertility rates among different ethnic groups, and ongoing challenges arising from its historical and geopolitical context. The ethnic Kazakh population, which had dwindled to a minority by the end of the Soviet era due to the decades of Russian and other non-Kazakh immigration, has seen a marked resurgence. This recovery is partly due to the natural increase and a concerted effort by the Kazakh government to encourage the return of ethnic Kazakhs from abroad. Post-independence policies were implemented to attract members of the Kazakh diaspora back to Kazakhstan, offering various incentives such as citizenship rights, financial aid, and assistance in resettlement. These policies have been relatively successful, leading to a significant reparation of ethnic Kazakhs, particularly from neighboring countries like Uzbekistan, Mongolia, and Russia. Accompanying the recovery of the ethnic Kazakh population are the notable differences in fertility rates between the ethnic Kazakhs and Russians residing in Kazakhstan. Ethnic Kazakhs currently exhibit a higher fertility rate compared to their Russian counterparts, who have a fertility rate below the replacement level. For ethnic Kazakhs, the higher fertility rate can be attributed to cultural traditions, rural settlement patterns where larger families are more common, and perhaps a response to the nationalistic encouragement of repopulation strategies by the government. In contrast, the Russian population, which is more urbanized and perhaps influenced by the broader Russian trend of lower birth rates, continues to have fewer children. The higher fertility rate among ethnic Kazakhs is contributing to their increasing share of the population, while the proportion of ethnic Russians and other minority groups is declining. Such trends are reshaping the demographic profile of Kazakhstan, gradually aligning it more closely with its titular nationality. So, what do you think about Kazakhstan's population? Intrigued by its unique history and evolving demographics? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more insightful content.